Difficult, yes, but arguably not impossible. Today's Conservative leadership thinks devolution can win out over independence and keep the Scots happy, with careful handling.
The first thing, and I've said this many times, I really mean it, is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom has to get up to Scotland to meet with the First Minister and to say, look, I understand, I have a mandate for the United Kingdom, but I understand the reservations that people in Scotland have, and I want to work with everyone in Scotland to make sure we keep the United Kingdom together.
But how could he govern the whole of the UK when the Tories have very limited support in Scotland? Cameron thinks the Scots can be kept happy with a deal.
Just as I respect the ability of the Scottish Parliament to say, on tuition fees or whatever, we take a different view. But likewise, the argument does go the other way, that if a government in Westminster has a mandate to deliver issues to do with nuclear deterrence or the size of the army or whatever, then they should be able to do that without the Scottish Government trying to obstruct them. My party, for instance, supports Britain having a nuclear deterrent that is independent. This is important, and that's a mandate, if we're elected, that we will have to deliver.
Back at Holyrood, it doesn't look as if that offer will be enough to satisfy the Scottish Government.
The idea that you can base a new generation of nuclear missiles in Scotland and not talk or listen to the people of Scotland about it is ridiculous. I mean, it's like me saying that, well, I'll tell you what, we'll go and sink all Scotland's carbon dioxide in the Thames, but we won't bother consulting David Cameron. I mean, come on. I think there has to be if the argument is to treat Scotland with respect, then it must be translated into more than rhetoric. It must be reflected in deeds, whoever is Prime Minister.
And that means that if he's not going to get his compact on those terms, you'd have to negotiate it.
Well, look, I'm always looking to rub along with people as best I can.
But you won't roll over. You won't roll over and allow Trident to happen. The new generation Trident.
I'm not a rolling over sort of person.
Is Westminster so worried about keeping Scotland happy in the Union that it's neglecting the biggest part of the Union, that glorious, curious clan, the English? Fretful that they're feeling overlooked, I went to offer solace.
Then we come with a waistcoat.
Oh, this is a noble moment now, gentlemen, a noble moment. Average English folk? Maybe not. But they understand national identity, and you know something? They're just a mite envious of the Scots.
I don't feel that the English have got the same sense of identity as you Scots are fortunate to have, actually.
Their culture's under threat. Seem to protect their heritage a lot more than those that are...
I don't feel a threat from it. I would encourage it, yeah. There's people taking control of their own political identity and destiny.
Popular culture is one thing, but how about politics?
It seems to be the Scottish Parliament has done an awful lot of good things that it would be very nice to have done here. I'm not quite sure where the money comes from to do it, but nonetheless, there are things like free tuition for students, those sort of things, care for the elderly. Yeah. They've done things that we haven't got,
These English folk don't wish the Scots ill, far from it. But scratch the surface and there are signs of unease south of the border.
School dinners, I remember them. Burnt burgers, cremated cabbage, unidentifiable pink puddings. Mind you, what do you expect for 43p a head?
A pound a head?
43p a head, it's the average cost of a school meal in England.
Not in Scotland. In Scotland it's a pound a head.
That's more than twice as much. How come it's more in Scotland?
Well, there's just more to spend per person in Scotland generally. When they take the taxes from the UK and then share them out, Scotland gets more per person than England does.
The English Democrats have very little support and people question their specific figures. But this general view is also expressed by mainstream politicians. The Mayor of London reckons his people get a raw deal.
There are issues of fairness around the devolution settlement, which does give the Scottish Parliament the ability to do things for people in Scotland that the people of this country, of England, can't actually afford, like free care for the elderly, like no top-up fees for students. And I think when students in England, or elderly people in England, look at those benefits in Scotland, they do feel a certain sense of injustice.
Is this causing the union to unravel? Scotland now has free eye tests, England doesn't. Scotland has fully free dental checks, England doesn't. Scotland is planning to make all prescriptions free in 2 years' time. Devolution has led to different policies across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. But overall, Scots get 16% more per head than the English on healthcare, 13% extra on education.
I do think it pretty monstrous that you have free care for the elderly in Scotland and no tuition fees, no top-up fees, when you still get considerable subsidies from the rest of the UK, and in particular from England, and in particular from London, which contributes net 18 billion to the UK economy. So, I do think that it might be a good thing if the Scottish Parliament used its tax-varying policies, tax-varying powers, to pay for them themselves.
So the English cry foul, but there are some areas where spending per head in England outpaces Scotland. England has a 9% advantage in law and order. And the Scottish Government says it's facing tough spending cuts ahead as the recession bites. The Scots living on this street hold the purse strings, and they insist it's a fair deal.
Well, I think the most important thing to recognise is that the Scottish Parliament has a budget. The budget is part of the UK system of public finance. It is a very generous budget. Scotland's received, I think, in the last year, twice as much as it was receiving the day that Donald Dewar took over at the Scottish office. So it's a budget that enables expenditure on health and education. Of course, you're going to have the usual issues about how much and how little and everything else. But I think most people in Scotland will recognise that Scotland has received, as a result of the Barnett formula, a fair deal.
That formula tops up Scotland's budget each year based on population. Nationalists insist Scotland could do better going solo, but the Prime Minister says recent events counter that, in particular the small matter of bailing out 2 Scottish banks.
Now we own, as a United Kingdom government, I think 70 or 80% of both of these banks. I do think that most people understand that the main argument that nationalism has tried to put forward over recent years, the economics of independence, that it would be a better financial deal for Scotland, has been proven pretty hollow.
But then there's oil, North Sea oil, largely in Scottish waters. If, like the Prime Minister, you think that oil belongs to the whole of the UK, then you believe the Scots should be happy. But if, like the SNP, you think it's Scotland's oil, then it looks like a raw deal. Peter Odell has worked for more than 50 years in the industry, at home and abroad, and is one of the UK's most respected oil economists.
Some of the oil in the North Sea is Scottish. Other parts of the North Sea would come under the guise of England. What is the problem is drawing the line between them somewhere just north of Berwick and out into the middle of the North Sea. I think I would argue that it is Scotland that will take the most advantage. I have seen some indications that it could be between 80 and 90%. So Scotland's well ahead and will be well ahead, as most of the developments that are going to occur in the future are going to be north of Berwick.
Would Scotland be a happier place if the oil was in Scottish hands? If you want to see what a small country in control of its oil looks like, you can jump on a boat